That's the debate. They also worry about the practical stuff. How do you fit AI into our laws? And then there's the scary stuff like job losses, inequality getting worse.
Wow, okay, so we've got one side focused on AI potentially feeling deserving protection, and the other highlighting all the ways it's not human and the problems that could come from giving it legal status. Big crossroads.
You got it. And to figure this out, we got to get real about what AI can do right now. How close are we to truly sentient machines? What are the limits we need to understand before we start handing out rights?
Which brings us perfectly to the next part of our deep dive, the tech itself. What's actually going on under the hood of AI?
So let's get into the nitty-gritty of the tech itself. AI's come a long way, no doubt, but when we talk about true sentience, consciousness,
Like the robots taking over the world level of AI.
haha, not quite. But it's easy to get carried away with that stuff, especially with all the movies and books out there. But the reality is, AI today, it has some pretty big limitations. And Dr. Gudarzi does a good job of laying those out because it's important to understand those before we even start talking about virtual persons.
Okay, so what are we talking about? What can't AI do yet?
One of the biggest things is context. Common sense, you know? Humans, we can navigate all sorts of crazy social situations, pick up on little cues.
Read between the lines, basically.
Exactly. AI still struggles with that. It can process tons of data, but it might miss the stuff that, to us, is obvious.
So even if it's super fast, super smart in some ways, it's not thinking like we do.
Nope. And then there's the data itself. AI learns from data, right? But that data can have bias baked in, inaccuracies.
Which means the AI could end up making biased decisions, even if that's not what the programmer intended.
Bingo. And that's why Dr. Gudarzi talks so much about data quality and ethics in AI development. It's not enough to make AI powerful, it has to be responsible too.
Makes sense. So common sense bias. What else is holding AI back right now?
True learning. AI today, it's amazing at specific tasks, but it can't really learn on its own, adapt like humans do.
So no robots composing symphonies anytime soon, huh?
Not likely. And don't forget the practical stuff. AI needs a ton of computing power, energy. It's not exactly sustainable the way it is now.
Okay, fair enough. But let's say, for argument's sake, that we do overcome these limits. What if AI becomes truly sentient, conscious, maybe even surpasses us in some ways?
That's the big question, isn't it? And that's why Dr. Gudarzi's book is so timely. He's saying we got to think about these possibilities now, not when it's too late.
So it's not just a debate about AI rights today, it's about preparing for a future where this stuff might actually happen.
Exactly. Proactive, not reactive. And part of that is realizing it's not just about the tech itself. Culture, how people view AI, that plays a huge role.
Yeah, good point. Not everyone sees robots the same way.
Right. Dr. Gudarzi talks about how, in some cultures, Japan, for example, robots are seen as helpers, almost like companions.
It's like their whole culture embraces technology in a different way.
Totally. Whereas Western cultures, we've got all those dystopian stories, robots taking over.
So robot rights might be a harder sell in some places than others.
For sure. So it's not just about laws. It's about understanding these different perspectives, respecting that not everyone's going to be on the same page.
Which is going to be tough, but important.
Yeah.
And then there's the whole psychology of how we relate to AI, especially as it gets more human-like.
Right. Dr. Gudarzi talks about how people form these parasocial relationships with AI, like they treat it as a friend, even though it's not.
That reminds me of that movie Her, where the guy falls in love with his AI assistant. Back then it seemed crazy. Now it's like, maybe not so much.
It's like science fiction becoming reality, right? And it brings up this question of trust, how much we should rely on AI, especially for things like healthcare, legal advice, even companionship, like you said.
Which brings us to a whole other area, AI companions. This is where things get really wild.
AICs, Dr. Gudarzi calls them. It sounds futuristic, but honestly, they're already being developed. AI specifically designed for companionship, support, interaction.
Okay, this is where I start to get a little freaked out. What are the ethics of having AI friends or even partners?
Yeah, Dr. Gudarzi gets into all that. He talks about the potential for AI to reinforce stereotypes, the whole issue of consent in AI relationships.